Hello, and welcome to Herpin the Deer for My Gift. Today we'll be reading Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, Chapter 36, The Flaw in the Plan. He was lying face down in the ground again. The smell of the forest filled his nostrils. He could feel the cold hard ground beneath his cheek, and the hinge of his glasses, which had been knocked sideways by the fall, cutting into his temple. Every inch of him ached, and the place where the killing curse had hit him felt like the bruise of an iron-clad punch. He did not stir, but remained exactly where he had fallen, with his left arm bent at an awkward angle and his mouth gaping. He had expected to hear cheers of triumph and jubilation at his death, but instead hurried footsteps, whispers, and solicitous murmurs filled the air. "My lord, my lord." It was Bellatrix's voice, and she spoke as if to a lover. Harry did not dare open his eyes, but allowed his other senses to explore his predicament. He knew that his wand was still stowed beneath his robes, because he could feel it pressed between his chest and the ground. A slight cushioning effect in the area of his stomach told him that the invisibility cloak was also there, stuffed out of sight. "My lord." "That will do," said Voldemort's voice. More footsteps. Several people were backing away from the same spot. Desperate to see what was happening and why, Harry opened his eyes in millimeter. Voldemort seemed to be getting to his feet. Various Death Eaters were hurrying away from him, returning to the crowd lining the clearing. Bellatrix alone remained behind, kneeling beside Voldemort. Harry closed his eyes again and considered what he had seen. The Death Eaters had been huddled around Voldemort, who seemed to have fallen to the ground. Something had happened when he had hit Harry with the killing curse. Had Voldemort too collapsed? It seemed like it. And both of them had fallen briefly unconscious, and both of them had now returned. "My lord, let me—" "I do not require assistance," said Voldemort coldly, and though he could not see it, Harry pictured Bellatrix withdrawing a helpful hand. "The boy, is he dead?" There was complete silence in the clearing. Nobody had approached Harry, but he felt their concentrated gaze. It seemed to press him harder into the ground, and he was terrified a finger or an eyelid might twitch. "You," said Voldemort, and there was a bang and a small shriek of pain. "Examine him. Tell me whether he is dead." Harry did not know who had been sent to verify. He could only lie there, with his heart thumping traitorously, and wait to be examined, but at the same time noting, small comfort though it was, that Voldemort was wary of approaching him, that Voldemort suspected that all had not gone to plan. Hands, softer than he had been expecting, touched Harry's face, pulled back an eyelid, crept beneath his shirt, wink, down to his chest, and felt his heart. He could hear the woman's fast breathing. Her long hair tickled his face. He knew that she could feel the steady pounding of life against his ribs. "Is Draco alive? Is he in the castle?" The whisper was barely audible. Her lips were an inch from his ear. Her head bent so low that her long hair shielded his face from the onlookers. "Yes," he breathed back. He felt the hand on his chest contract. Her nails pierced him. Then it was withdrawn. She had sat up. "He is dead!" Narcissa Malfoy called to the watchers. And now they shouted. Now they yelled in triumph and stamped their feet, and through his eyelids Harry saw bursts of red and silver light shoot into the air in celebration. Still feigning death on the ground, he understood. Narcissa knew that the only way she would be permitted to enter Hogwarts and find her son was as part of the conquering army. She no longer cared whether Voldemort won. "You see?" screeched Voldemort over the tumult. "Harry Potter is dead by my hand, and no man alive can threaten me now! Watch, Crucio!" Harry had been expecting it, knew his body would not be allowed to remain unsullied upon the forest floor. It must be subjected to humiliation to prove Voldemort's victory. He was lifted into the air, and it took all his determination to remain limp, yet the pain he expected did not come. He was thrown once, twice, 3 times into the air. His glasses fell off, and his wand slid a little beneath his robes, but he kept himself floppy and lifeless, wink, and when he fell to the ground for the last time, the clearing echoed with jeers and shrieks of laughter. "Now," said Voldemort, "we go to the castle, and show them what has become of their hero. Who shall drag the body? No, wait." There was a fresh outbreak of laughter, and after a few moments Harry felt the ground trembling beneath him. "You carry him," Voldemort said. "He will be nice and visible in your arms, will he not? Pick up your little friend, Hagrid. And the glasses. Put on the glasses. He must be recognizable." Someone slammed Harry's glasses back into his face with deliberate force, but the enormous hands that lifted him into the air were exceedingly gentle. He could feel Hagrid's arms trembling with the force of his heaving sobs. Great tears splashed down upon him as Hagrid cradled Harry in his arms, and Harry did not dare, by movement or word, to intimate to Hagrid that all was not lost, that all was not yet lost. "Move," said Voldemort, and Hagrid stumbled forward, forcing his way through the close-growing trees, back through the forest. Branches caught at Harry's hair and robes, but he lay quiescent. His mouth lolling opened, his eyes shut, and in the darkness, while the Death Eaters crowed all around him, and while Hagrid sobbed blindly, nobody looked to see whether a pulse beat in the exposed neck of Harry Potter. The two giants crashed along behind the Death Eaters. Harry could hear trees creaking and falling as they passed. They made so much din that birds rose shrieking into the sky, and even the jeers of the Death Eaters were drowned. The victorious procession marched on toward the open ground, and after a while Harry could tell by the lightening of the darkness through his closed eyelids that the trees were beginning to thin. "Bane!" Hagrid's unexpected bellow nearly forced Harry's eyes open. "Happy now, are you, that you didn't fight? You cowardly bunch of nags! Are you happy Harry Potter's dead?" Hagrid could not continue, but broke down in fresh tears. Harry wondered how many centaurs were watching the procession pass. He dared not open his eyes to look. Some of the Death Eaters called insults at the centaurs as they left them behind. A little later, Harry sensed by a freshening in the air that they had reached the edge of the forest. "Stop!" Harry thought that Hagrid must have been forced to obey Voldemort's command, because he lurched a little. And now a chill settled over them where they stood, and Harry heard the rasping breath of the Dementors that patrolled the outer trees. They would not affect him now. The fact of his own survival burned inside of him, a talisman against them, as though his father's stag kept guardian in his heart. Someone passed close by Harry, and he knew that it was Voldemort himself because he spoke a moment later, his voice magically magnified so that it swelled through the grounds, crashing upon Harry's eardrum. "Harry Potter is dead. He was killed as he ran away, trying to save himself while you laid down your lives for him. We bring you his body as proof that your hero is gone. The battle is won. You have lost half your fighters. My Death Eaters outnumber you, and the boy who lived is finished. There must be no more war. Anyone who continues to resist, man, woman, or child, will be slaughtered, as will every member of their family. Come out of that castle now, kneel before me, and you shall be spared. Your parents and children, your brothers and sisters will live and be forgiven, and you will join me in the new world we shall build together." There was silence in the grounds and from the castle. Voldemort was so close to him that Harry did not dare open his eyes again. "Come," said Voldemort, and Harry heard him move ahead, and Hagrid was forced to follow. Now Harry's eyes opened a fraction, and he saw Voldemort striding in front of them, wearing the great snake Nagini around his shoulders, now free of her enchanted cage. But Harry had no possibility of extracting the wand concealed under his robes, without being noticed by the Death Eaters, who marched on either side of him through the slowly lightening darkness. "Harry!" sobbed Hagrid. "Oh, Harry! Harry!" Harry shut his eyes again. He knew that they were approaching the castle, and strained his ears to distinguish, above the gleeful voices of the Death Eaters and their tramping footsteps, signs of life from those within. "Stop!" The Death Eaters came to a halt. Harry heard them spreading out in a line facing the open front doors of the school. He could see, even through his closed eyelids, the reddish glow that meant light streamed upon him from the entrance hall. He waited. Any moment, the people for whom he had tried to die would see him, lying apparently dead in Hagrid's arms. "No!" The scream was the more terrible because he had never expected or dreamed that Professor McGonagall could make such a sound. He heard another woman laughing nearby, and he knew that Bellatrix gloried in McGonagall's despair. He squinted again for a single second, and saw the open doorway filling with people, as the survivors of the battle came out onto the front steps to face their vanquishers, and see the truth of Harry's death for themselves. He saw Voldemort standing a little in front of him, stroking Nagini's head with a single white finger. He closed his eyes again. "No! No! Harry! Harry!" Ron, Hermione's, and Ginny's voices were worse than McGonagall's. Harry wanted nothing more than to call back, yet he made himself lie silent, and their cries acted like a trigger. The crowd of survivors took up the cause, screaming and yelling abuse of the Death Eaters until... "Silence!" cried Voldemort, and there was a bang and a flash of bright light, and silence was forced upon them all. "It is over. Set him down, Hagrid, at my feet, where he belongs." Harry felt himself lowered onto the grass. "You see?" said Voldemort, and Harry felt him striding backward and forward, right beside the place where he lay. "Harry Potter is dead. Do you understand now, deluded ones? He was nothing, ever, but a boy who relied on others to sacrifice themselves for him." "He beat you!" yelled Ron, and the charm broke, and the defenders of Hogwarts were shouting and screaming again until a second, more powerful bang extinguished their voices once more. "He was killed while trying to sneak out of the castle grounds," said Voldemort, and there was a relish in his voice for the lie. "Killed while trying to save himself." But Voldemort broke off. Harry heard a scuffle and a shout, then another bang, a flash of light, and a grunt of pain. He opened his eyes in infinitesimal amount. Someone had broken free of the crowd and charged at Voldemort. Harry saw the figure hit the ground, disarmed, Voldemort throwing the challenger's wand aside and laughing. "And who is this?" he said in a soft snake's hiss. "Who has volunteered to demonstrate what happens to those who continue to fight when the battle is lost?" Bellatrix gave a delighted laugh. "It's Neville Longbottom, my lord, the boy who has been giving the Carrows so much trouble. The son of the Aurors, remember?" "Ah, yes, I remember," said Voldemort, looking down at Neville, who was struggling back to his feet, unarmed and unprotected, standing in the no-man's land between the survivors and the Death Eaters. "But you're pureblood, aren't you, my brave boy?" Voldemort asked Neville, who stood facing him, his empty hands curled into fists. "So what if I am?" said Neville loudly. "You show spirit and bravery, and you come of noble stock. You will make a very valuable Death Eater. We need your kind, Neville Longbottom." "I'll join you when hell freezes over," said Neville. "Dumbledore's army!" he shouted, and there was an answering cheer from the crowd, whom Voldemort's silencing charms seemed unable to hold. "Very well," said Voldemort, and Harry heard more danger in the silkiness of his voice than in the most powerful curse. "If that is your choice, Longbottom, we revert to the original plan. On your head," he said quietly. "Be it." Still watching through his lashes, Harry saw Voldemort wave his wand. Seconds later, out of the castle's shattered windows, something that looked like a misshapen bird flew through the half-light and landed in Voldemort's hand. He shook the bewildered object by its pointed end, and it dangled, empty and ragged, the Sorting Hat.